Welcome back to the You Only podcast, where we break down the books that shape the way we live, think, and heal. In our last episode, we explored the power of attachment and uncovered how our earliest bonds shape the way we love and connect. Today, we build on that with Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation, a book that diagnoses how childhood itself was rewired when we shifted from play to phones. Haidt takes us through 9 chapters: the great rewiring of childhood, the fragile generation, the play deficit, the phone-based childhood, the epidemic of mental illness, why girls suffer more, why boys are failing too, the way forward, and finally, the call to courage. These chapters trace how overprotection and smartphones collided to create skyrocketing anxiety, depression, and disconnection, while also pointing to solutions for parents, schools, and communities. If the power of attachment was about the roots of resilience, the anxious generation is about the soil we're planting our kids in right now, and if we don't change that soil, no amount of therapy or medication can fully repair the damage. This book is not just great, it's essential. We'll unpack the science, the stories, the coping skills, and the solutions it offers for all of us. Episode star author Jonathan Haidt, The Anxious Generation.
Something happened in the early 2010s, and my argument in the book is a tragedy in 2 acts. The first act is the loss of the play-based childhood. You were out with your friends after school. There was nobody supervising. You had to learn how to work out conflicts, how to face adversity. So that's what kids have had for hundreds of thousands of years. It's part of being a mammal. You play, you develop skills. We began to crack down on that, to lock kids up in the 90s, to not let them out. So we're restricting what they most need, which is play, from the 90s through the 2000s. But mental health doesn't collapse then. It's actually pretty stable. Then we get Act 2, which is the arrival of the phone-based childhood. And what that is in 2010, everybody had a flip phone. The iPhone had come out, but most teens had a flip phone, no front-facing camera, no social media on the phone, no high-speed data. And by 2015, everyone's got all those other things. Now suddenly everyone has a smartphone, front-facing camera, high-speed internet, social media, especially Instagram, on the phone. And almost like someone turned a switch in 2013, girls in America and many other countries suddenly become very anxious, depressed, and self-harming.
Today, we're going to be covering The Anxious Generation, a 2004 book by social psychologist Jonathan Haidt that argues the rise in teen mental illness is caused by a great rewiring of childhood, driven by the widespread adoption of smartphones and social media, which replaced traditional play-based childhoods. And thank you for tuning in to the You Only podcast. Hopefully you're going to enjoy this. So, smartphones were supposed to connect us. They were supposed to give us access to the entire world, to knowledge, to friendships, to opportunities. But in reality, when we gave every kid a smartphone, we unknowingly rewired childhood itself, and we see it play out before us every single day. We move kids away from outdoor play, risk-taking, free exploration, and replace it with an endless scroll, endless comparison, and endless anxiety. Today, almost 100% of American teenagers have a smartphone, and most say they are constantly online. Between 2010 and 2020, the rates of major depressive episodes among U.S. adolescents nearly doubled. Now that's alarming, with the sharpest rise among girls. Wow, what kind of expectations are we putting on our young ladies out there, gentlemen? Come on, man. By the most recent survey, 1 in 5 American teens ages 12 to 17 had at least one major depressive episode in the past year, the highest rate in 3 decades. These numbers are not just statistics. They are stories of young people who cannot sleep, who cut themselves, who wake up with dread before school, who have panic attacks when their phone batteries die. And we have all witnessed this. I've witnessed this. One of my kids had a girlfriend, and she would wear these shorts over to my house. I mean, they were hiked up to her crotch, but what was on her thighs just made me feel so ashamed, And it was my house, and she was a guest because she had over 200, deep. It was insane, you guys. Like, it looked like a scoreboard on her thighs, but they were scars that were probably 1 inch wide, maybe a little wider, by like 2 millimeters thick. And there was hundreds of them all over her thighs because she was a masochistic person. She wanted her parents' love, and I knew it, but I wasn't her parent, so I couldn't say, hey, girl, come here, because, people would be thinking something. But it's like, I wanted to, and I would say things to her, but my daughter asked me not to, so I didn't do it anymore because it wasn't my place, and I agreed with my kid, like, hey, I'm sorry, but it was alarming. And I should have said something, and my kid was wrong. No, we need to sit down and talk. Anyways, this is one of the best books I've found. The Anxious Generation. Jonathan Haidt. It's not just another, this guy, he's a real social psychologist at NYU Stern, known for his work on morality and politics and the righteous mind and the coddling of the American mind. Check those books out, you guys. They were pretty awesome, but I picked The Anxious Generation because it was mind-blowing. But something shifted in him around 2015. He began noticing disturbing mental health trends in the data in his own classroom. Students were more fragile, more anxious, more easily thrown into despair. Haidt looked at the research, looked at his own children, and realized that the arrival of the smartphone and social media around 2010 lined up almost perfectly with the explosion of youth mental illness. He began asking, what have we done to childhood? And each and every one of us in the United States today, we've been thinking that same thing for the last 15 years. Like, what is going on? Like, I ran the rivers. I was so worried about catching fish and bugs and worms and, adventuring with my friends and getting poison ivy all over my body, But he argues that there used to be a play-based childhood, which we all agree with that. I do. Children roam their neighborhoods. In my life, this was the rule. Be home before the street light comes on. If you are not, I will whoop you. And you made sure. Or if I had an uncle, he said, you can go to the park. It was like a block away. He said, I whistle, you come. When we heard that whistle, we hightailed because we knew, man, my uncle was a prison guard. He did not play. And that's the truth. He did not play. But anyways, thank you guys for listening to the You Only podcast. And hopefully you were one of those kids that were roaming those neighborhoods, playing hide and seek and having a good time and having a real childhood and being a real person and not programmed and, pretty much perverse. That's what's going on with this stuff. It's perverse the human and pretty much sold us out. We biked around. We made mistakes. We climbed too high. They yelled at us, argued and resolved conflicts with each other on our own. We didn't need the police. That kind of unsupervised risky play gave kids real-world coping skills, and it taught them, social skills that you can't learn today because everybody wants an award for everything. In the 1990s and the 2000s, parents became more productive, and we were forced into systems because these companies wanted every single dime that we had, and we had no idea because we thought this was part of the American dream. And children's lives became organized, supervised, and scheduled. By itself, that would have been a big change. But then came the phone-based childhood. By 2012, and I know it's true because I seen it, and I kept saying no. My kids kept begging. I said, absolutely not. You are not having a phone. Middle schoolers and high schools were glued to their screens instantly, communicating mostly through apps instead of face-to-face, losing sleep, comparing themselves to highlight reels of other kids' lives, trapped in this pretty much fictitious, endless dopamine loop. And it's true because us as adults now, we also are beginning to experience this. And this is how you get deprogrammed, my friends. You throw the Bible down and pick up a phone and say, oh, I'm going to use this and read the Bible too. It's funny that you never come back to it, though. Yeah, have you thought about that?
Episode star author Jonathan Haidt, The Anxious Generation.
Why is it that we're all giving our kids phones at such an early age? Because we're afraid that they will then be left out. And they're afraid of being left out. We're terrified of being isolated, being cut off, being alone. That's why banishment used to be a punishment in the ancient world. Before they had like good prisons and things, like your punishment is to be banished. We're not going to kill you, we're just going to send you away. And that's like death, social death. And teenagers are really, really vulnerable to social death. If people are only supporting something because they're afraid to speak up, or if they're kept in place by fear, as soon as the fear calms, everything can change very, very quickly. The kids themselves say, yeah, I'd like to get off if everyone else does. If a system is held in place by the fear of missing out, and we can all get out together, then kids aren't missing out. We give them back childhood, we give them back play, we give them back each other.
Because the brain science behind this stuff is really sobering. Adolescents already have highly sensitive reward systems. They crave social appeal, novelty, and stimulation. But the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control, judgment, and long-term planning, is not fully developed until the mid-20s. So quit, society, please do me a favor here in America. Quit holding 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds, I don't care. We need to quit holding these young men accountable and start getting them help and stop peddling these social systems that we know haven't worked in 80 years and start seriously focusing on our young man here at home and our young woman. It's alarming with these two characters. And they ain't even dating now. They literally, it's just so sad. Anyways, you guys, so I don't want to get on a different topic. This was a great book. Seriously, I'm so adamant about it. I mean, once I got done reading it, I'm like, I was out here. Seriously, I love you guys, and thank you for listening. But social media apps, they're designed to hijack this imbalance. Negotiations ping the brain dopamine pathways. Likes and comments produce a rush, but also set up cycles of withdrawal and craving, like heroin. And I'm not kidding. It's technology, and they've figured it out because they've studied the opioid receptors in the brain for 200, 300 years now. And when those notifications don't come, you guys, and you've seen it with your own kids, I know you have, or when the comparison tilts to the negative, the same system drives feelings of rejection and inadequacy, then comes despair. So I found Dr. Sarah Nagayan, a child psychiatrist I spoke to about this. So she described it bluntly. When adolescents are exposed to consistent social comparison, their brain's reward circuitry fires in ways that reinforce insecurity. The amygdala becomes hyperactive or hyperactivated. The stress response system gets stuck over time. This looks like generalized anxiety, social anxiety, depression, and even self-harm. Let's ground this in real numbers, everybody. Since 2010, hospital admissions for self-harm among teenage girls have surged by over 60% in the U.S. It's alarming. Be alarmed. If you see this, tell them, be the parent, be the adult, and get them what they need. Stop sitting back and doing what these people have programmed you to do and turn a blind eye. And that's what they do here because they don't want to get involved because, I'm not their parent like I was thinking. Well, I tried and my kid told me not to. So now there's a person out there roaming around with these insecurities that didn't have to be insecure. I could have literally, and I did go to her parents anyways. In the UK, similar spikes are seen in emergency departments. Suicide rates among youth climb steadily, particularly among young girls. Ages 10 to 14. Does that not break your heart? Where rates tripled between 2007 and 2021. And these trends are not just in America. Canada and the UK, Australia, New Zealand all show they all show the patterns. The same ones. The smartphone revolution was global because these companies wanted money, money, money. Look at how fast they started pumping out new cell phones for $1,000 a piece. You know how, no wonder Apple's worth $3 trillion, and it is the mental health crisis of today. Honestly, this is social media use. This is not coincidence. It is correlation reinforced by mountains of studies. A 2023 meta-analysis found that high social media use was consistently linked to higher rates of depression and anxiety, especially in adolescent girls. Yes, there are other stressors, climate change, politics, the pandemic. The sharp turning point came the moment we handed children a device designed to keep them hooked. And they were, the war on drugs was the war on the people. Well, they realized that the Magnificent Seven was their way to get what they wanted, which was to line all their pockets, create big, huge money deals that, we gave them permission to do in 1914 here in the U.S., which now I think everybody's getting the realization that wasn't such a good idea. It only took them 80 years to figure out how to screw everybody in the whole world, and they are. And yet, we can't just say cell phones are evil. And that's what's funny to me. Some young people find support online, especially those who feel isolated in their offline lives. LGBTQ youth, for example, often report finding community online when they have none at home. That's important to recognize. But when the balance tips too far, when the phone becomes the substitute for real-world relationships and real-world coping skills, that's when the problem's empty. The tragedy is that while children are scrolling inside, real life is slipping way outside. Parks are empty. Neighborhood streets are silent. Playgrounds are underused. Childhood has become evacuated into a 6-inch screen. Thank you guys for listening to the You Only podcast. And I feel like some of this information is so tragic because all of us have gone through these things and we've seen it coming. And I didn't know what to do about it either, because I really did not ever think that the schools had control of my kids when they were always calling me, telling me, hey, your son was involved in a fight today, even though he got punched in the stomach and he threw up all over. I love my kids, I do. But they're all going through this stuff, and right now, you guys, I want to share with you, I'm really trying to help one of my oldest sons. He's really having a hard time because I really am starting to believe that borderline personality disorder is hereditary. My dad had it, my brother has it, both of my brothers have it, I have it, and now my son's really starting to have some issues, and I'm really trying to reach out, be involved. I am trying to get him on my insurance because, my son owns his own home. He's doing really well for himself. I'm very proud of him and his decision making, but for some reason, I told, and I've reached out to him recently and told him, I said, yeah, at 22, the same thing happened to me. Like, I just went wild. Like, I had no control, over my emotional warfare inside of my head. It was wild, and my kid's going through it now, so I'm forced to have to man up, be an adult, find people out there that may have more knowledge than I do, and that my son may listen to, because unfortunately now our kids really do not want to listen to us. They have no need to. The schools have programmed them to, you matter, you're yourself, you got this, you don't need nobody. Thank you guys for listening to the You Only podcast, and hopefully you are enjoying this wonderful read. I know I am. I when I found this, I was just blown away. So much good information. The disorders we're seeing most often are anxiety and depression today. Generalized anxiety disorder is marked by excessive worry, restlessness, trouble concentrating, irritability, and sleep problems. Social anxiety disorder shows up as intense fear of being judged or humiliated in social setting. Major depressive disorder involves persistent sadness, loss of interest in activities, fatigue, guilt, and suicidal thoughts. These conditions are not abstract. They are the lived experience of millions of kids right now, and that's sad. Parents report children who panic when they forget their phone at home, who stay up until 3 a.m. scrolling on TikTok, who cry over not getting enough likes, who avoid real-world interaction because they feel inadequate compared to filtered images online. And we as adults need to face the fact. We built this environment. We normalized it. We allowed tech companies to run experiments on the most vulnerable brains in society. That's a part of the book Propaganda I talked about, is getting consent without them knowing that you're getting consent. And that's why I did that book, and that's how it ties into this book. So what do we do? Haidt proposes a radical but practical reset. Delay smartphones until high school. I did that with some of my kids. Delay social media until at least age 16. Recreate spaces for unsupervised, unstructured play. Parents can come together in communities to form phone-free pledges. And it's happened. You can check them out across America. Agreeing not to give their kids smartphones too early. And that's why I decided with my last two that, nope, you gotta wait. And as soon as they got them, they never came back. And I mean that, you guys. They stayed in their rooms, never socialized with us ever again. And I mean that, for 5 years. From 13 all the way to 18. And as soon as 18 hit, boom, packed up, moved out. No joke. Schools can adopt phone-free policies during the day. And many already have. On individual level, coping strategies are essential. Set boundaries with devices. No phones in the bedroom at night. No screens at dinner. No push notifications except for urgent contacts. Prioritize sleep hygiene, dim lights, consistent bedtimes, a wind down routine. Practice mindfulness to regulate attention and emotion. Simple breathing exercises, guided meditation, journaling intrusive thoughts. Therapy can also help, especially attachment-focused therapy that repairs the lack of real connection many kids now experience. And I talked about attachment styles in the last episode, The Power of Attachment. Go back and listen to it. It was great. And for parents, one of the hardest but most important coping shifts is to resist the urge to overprotect in the wrong ways. We as humans need to experience injury to an extent, because then our brain learns balance, our brain learns boundary. It is not dangerous to let your child bike to a friend's house or climb a tree. It is dangerous to let them disappear into a screen for 8 hours a day. Real risk, real exploration, and real play build resilience. Overprotection and the real world plus overexposure online is the worst of both worlds. The solution is to flip it. Loosen the leash offline, tighten the leash online. And as a society, I feel like it was vice versa because, we did not know any better. And it is unfortunate that now we just don't get it. Now, let's address criticism. Some researchers argue that the rise in reported mental illness is partly due to greater awareness and reduced stigma. More kids are willing to say they are depressed or anxious, so the numbers look higher. That may explain some of the increase. But the speed and scale of the rise cannot be explained by awareness alone. When emergency room visits for self-harm rise 50% in less than a decade, that's not awareness. That's a crisis. Others point out that smartphones are not the only culprit. The pandemic, political unrest, and economic stress certainly added fuel. That's true, but those factors landed on a generation already weakened by digital overexposure. They were already vulnerable, already sleepless, already comparing, already anxious. The pandemic didn't create the crisis, it revealed it, because we were speeding, and then it was at a dead stop, dead halt. And scientists were saying that the earth started healing itself then. Yeah, wow. They came up with some doozies. Jonathan Haidt himself has faced criticism. Some accuse him of exaggerating, of cherry-picking data, of moral panic. But whether you agree with every conclusion or not, the broad strokes are undeniable. Children's mental health collapsed in the smartphone era. And you and me, we know this is true. We feel it. We can debate how much cause and how much is cause and how much is correlation, but we cannot deny the pattern. And the human brain is set up to see patterns every single day. And if we wait for perfect data before acting, we'll lose another generation in the meantime. And that's exactly the fear in every single person in the world's stomach right now, because it isn't just the United States. It's the Philippines. In the Philippines, they're the only country outside the United States that is most like the United States because we annexed the Philippines in 1849. But there's other countries out there, people in China are feeling this stuff too, and they're under way more control than we are. So here's the takeaway for you listening right now. If you are a parent, think about what you can do to give your child more freedom offline and less freedom online. If you are not a parent, think about your own relationship with technology, because this is every single one of yours responsibilities. Are you doom scrolling before bed? Ask yourself that. Are you sacrificing real conversations for digital noise? Try one small shift this week. Put your phone in another room before you sleep. Take a walk without headphones. Talk to a friend face to face. If you are struggling with anxiety or depression yourself, know that you are not broken. I'm not broken. Your brain is responding to an environment it was never designed for. But brains are plastic, and they're made up of plasticity. They change, they heal with boundaries, with therapy, with community, with risk, with real human connection. You can recalibrate, and you can do it. We can build a culture that values childhood again. A culture that allows kids to explore, to fail, to get dirty, to climb too high, to scrape a knee, to argue and make up, to grow resilient. A culture that recognizes a childhood in front of a screen is not a childhood at all. This is the call of the anxious generation. And it's not just about kids, it's about all of us. Because every time we silence a notification, every time we choose to be present, every time we set a boundary, we are taking back the power to live intentionally. We are proving that anxiety does not have to be our baseline. We are proving that humanity is stronger than an algorithm. So tonight, when you put down your phone, when you look around the room, when you step outside and breathe real air, remember this. We have the power to reclaim our attention, our resilience, and our joy. Childhood can be rewired again. And we are brave enough to make changes. Then the anxious generation can become resilient in its generation, like it was meant to be, purposefully designed by being aware and upfront. Thank you guys again for listening to the You Only podcast. This has been a wonderful time, and hopefully you've enjoyed this space, because we all have a responsibility here. We all feel this in our stomachs and in our hearts, like what is going on here with these kids. And I'm dealing with it right now with all my kids. So you are too, and I know you are. But folks, we got the power. We're smart enough. We're wise enough. We are not who these gadgets make us out to be. We are not who ChatGPT says we are. Get out there, create your life, live it with resilience. And think about it, resilience. The word silent or silence is in there. Silence is the key to healing everything that is of noise. And the evil ones always want noise, because then you can't hear the truth. Remember that, my friends. Until next time.
To make sense of life, death, and everything in between, then you need to tune in to the You Only podcast with your host, Lo Jackson. This isn't just another podcast. This is a movement, a deep dive into the human experience where real conversations meet raw emotion and truth gets personal. Lo Jackson keeps it real, asking the questions most are afraid to face, and giving you tools to grow, think, and live boldly. So if you're ready to stop surviving and start living, You Only is where your journey begins. Subscribe now. New episodes drop weekly. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen.